Early access is hurting sim racing as a whole. Over the past few years, every single sim racing title that has launched via early access, I believe, has been worse off because of it. And it's not all for the same reason. In fact, for the three main early access sim racing titles over the past couple of years, I believe all three of them have been worse off because of early access for completely different reasons from each other. But does that just mean I'm one of those complain about anything, even if it means complaining about a video game that I get to play before the actual release date? I don't think it's like that at all, because I am an oval sim racer. I get one choice. I don't get all of the buffet of choices like you guys get. I just get to observe from the sidelines and check the pulse of the community and understand what people want for the other sides of sim racing. But if there's one thing that I am, it is a sim racing YouTube nerd. I love to know what the community is thinking about many different topics. I love to just understand what people want in sim racing as a whole, even if it means not in oval racing. And with my talking to other people and doing research and all that, I've come to the conclusion that early access in sim racing is just completely detrimental to its core concept. Funny enough, there are two video games that I have played in 2025 much more than I have played any sim racing game, and that is The Bazaar and Deadlock. And both of those games are either in early access or was in early access throughout a period of 2025. So why did I like the early access of those games and play those a lot, whereas I just don't think that sim racing has any place for them? The real issue is that innovation in sim racing looks a lot different than innovation in those games. My favorite video game of 2025 so far is The Bazaar. It's a roguelike deck builder, but it's quasi-PvP with elements of Hearthstone, Balatro, you name it. That probably doesn't mean anything to most of you, but what I want to demonstrate with that is that it is something different. It is something outside anything that I've ever played before and outside of anything the majority of its players have ever played before. That is the number one place where early access thrives, where you can get a mostly finished version of the game, which is just rough around the edges, to a group of people where you can introduce new mechanics or new gameplay elements that are completely fresh to the people playing them to kind of get them into the ecosystem. The problem with this in sim racing is that this isn't how sim racing evolution goes. You're not suddenly going to have a new gaming experience because somebody releases a better sim racing title. You will see improvements in physics, in graphics, maybe a career mode if you're lucky, but all that put together, it's something that you've already experienced before, just better. And that is not a place where early access thrives, in my opinion. Take a look at Le Mans Ultimate, for example. It released in 2024 with 7 tracks, a couple car classes, basically just the WEC schedule and cars, but it was a complete experience. But the main issue with all of this is that because LMU launched in a state that is not in direct competition already with larger titles such as ACC at the time, iRacing, the original Assetto Corsa, because of that, they are automatically being compared to those competitors. It makes sense. But early access, you're like, oh, you don't want to compare it to that because it's not fair. Well, when you have a game that has completely unique and innovative gameplay mechanics, there is nothing to compare it to. You have free reign to test with what you want because your game is the experience. You don't have to compete against anyone else in that lane. There's always going to be competition in that sim racing lane to where when you launch an early access, no matter how complete or not it is, you will automatically be compared to what is already existing. So you're just fighting a losing battle from the start. When I was playing The Bazaar earlier this year, to go back to that, I probably put a few hundred hours into the game within the first 4 months of the year. And there were times where I thought, this game sucks. The meta sucks. Some of the items are completely broken. Sometimes the gameplay loop isn't even that fun, but I was addicted. I had no other direct competition to jump to, and The Bazaar was the only game that could scratch that itch. With a game like LMU, if you have similar issues, like let's say the netcode is really bad, which it was at times in LMU and arguably still is. If the netcode is really bad, there are other games that you can instantly jump ship to where the grass is greener. When you have a 1.5 year long early access like LMU, you're not building hype for your game. You're just establishing your name within the community with whatever product you have. It might not be fair, but that is what's gonna happen. Now, I understand why LMU needed to go early access at that point. They had a game that was playable, and the studio needed money. Basically, every other title that they tried to launch failed. So LMU is kind of their Hail Mary at that point. So I get it. I get why it went early access, but I'm not saying that it is good for the title long term, because many people's opinions on LMU will be very stuck to comparing it versus its complete game competitors throughout the entire year and a half up until it went into full access. And we call it full access, but it's still missing a lot of features that you would expect to be in a 1.0. But enough bullying LMU. That is a game that is out right now. You can race your friends on it. It is a real game. The same can't be said for Assetto Corsa Evo in its current state. In my opinion, Assetto Corsa Evo has successfully killed all the hype for its game because of how it is handling early access. If we look at the Steam player charts, the 24-hour peak for Assetto Corsa Evo is 300 people. Compare that to the original Assetto Corsa, which is almost 20,000 people. So about 50 times more people are playing Assetto Corsa, the decade-old game, compared to the new game that's in early access. That's not a good way to build hype. And you can speculate about the studio all you want. I'm not 100% sure myself, but to me, it feels like they did need that influx of cash, because the way the game was released back in January was as bare bones as you could be. There were barely cars and tracks. There were a few cars on launch and then a few tracks and no capability for racing online. Even 6 months later, you can't race Assetto Corsa Evo online. And because of that, there's just nothing that the players can do at the game. There's no way that you're getting people ingrained into the game itself because there's nothing for them to do. And don't get me wrong, early access isn't a new thing for Assetto Corsa. ACC was released as well with early access. And on first glance, you could see similar roadmaps. So, hey, ACC was good because of it. It was well off. It was successful. So ACEE probably can be too. But I want you to take a look a little bit closer at the roadmaps because it is extremely surprising. The initial build for ACC was in September of 2018 and the full game launched February of 2019. So that is less than 6 months start to finish throughout the entire early access. It has been over 6 months in the early access of ACE at this point, and we have gotten to step 2 of the calendar. To add insult to injury, the price for this lack of a game is $30, which is a good way to support the game if you truly believe in it. But if you are an outsider looking to get hyped for a new game that may be innovative, it may bring new things to the table, it might be the next greatest thing, $30 for a whole lot of nothing is not going to get any of that crowd excited. And this brings me to the second non-sim racing game that I want to draw parallels to with early access, and that is Deadlock, the real-time strategy meets Overwatch meets League of Legends game made by Valve. One of my favorite games of the year. It can be very frustrating at times because I suck at it, but it is a fun game to play with friends. There are two parallels that I want to make from Deadlock to Assetto Corsa. One is that Deadlock launched as a full game just as the Bazaar did and arguably LMU, but it was missing some characters. It was rough around the edges. Some of the graphics weren't done yet. Nothing was balanced yet in the game. So because of that, they wanted the community to help them balance the game, play test it essentially for them. And because of that, they have added a lot of updates, balancing characters, adding different items, different power-ups that you can get, and it's turned into a positive experience, all the while being free. Now, comparing the developer Valve to Kunos is crazy. Valve is one of the richest companies in the gaming space and maybe even the world. So they can release an early access game for free all they want. But I'm just showing you that that is the benefit to being able to release a game in early access like that. And even then, the hype for Deadlock has kind of died. I really feel like it would have done better with a full release. It's pretty much ready for it. And I feel like the community is a little bit in a lull right now, but regardless, there are still players. We still find games every night. I still get dumpstered every night, but it's okay because we're having fun, right? With a game like ACE, where the early access is lingering for too long at too slow of a pace, there is no way for the current fans, the current people who believe in the game, to stay in the game's ecosystem up until release. It will just spit them out when you feel like you're done hot lapping, done testing the cars, done testing the tracks. Once you kind of understand what the game is about, there's no reason to go back. There's no races, there's no anything. And once again, it brings you back to the point where there are competitors that are directly beating it just because it's not a finished game. With Deadlock, you could play Smite, I guess, or similar type games, but the unique aspects of the game make it to where even when it's not feeling polished and finished, I still want to play the game. With the non-sim racing games I've mentioned, it seems like the reason for early access was for a reason outside of money. It was to get players to play the game and understand the new mechanics before an official launch, or it was to use a larger community with a semi-finished game to balance it better, to make it more fun for when the game fully launches. With sim racing, you don't really get either of those benefits unless you're doing something like making Mario Kart. Like, I guess a Mario Kart early access would have been good, but that's not sim racing. So yeah, there's no sim racing that I can think of that would benefit from either of those things. I just don't believe that the feedback that you get from the community during an early access is worth the impressions that you make with them for not releasing a complete game and having them be constantly compared to complete games. And taking all those ideas and smashing them together, we'll quickly go over the third example, Renport. I made a whole video about Renport, more about their esports side, but the game itself I touched on quite a bit. It was essentially not even a game, even when it was being raced in pro esports leagues worth well over $1 million. So yeah, you can see how that would just not be successful for a sim racing game. It just was dead off the start. Pretty much the only people playing Renport now are the people involved with the esports in some way, and who knows for how much longer that's going to be going on. Now, I feel like Renport launched early access because it was forced to. You can't have a game not be released and playable when you have it on the books for a world championship in said game. So that's a very special case. And I don't think they did it for money if they had big investors, but they needed it released, so it was released. And now it's been stuck in early access. I can't be bothered to even know if it's fully out yet. I think it's still in early access, but the same goes. It's not a complete game. You don't have the full experience that you would expect in a sim racing game, especially one that you're trying to compete against established titles already. And because of that, you will always be looked over compared to the titles that have a more flushed out either game itself, like a career mode, or a multiplayer ecosystem like an iRacing. And again, I'm not saying this to be an iRacing shill. I really don't particularly care because I get one choice for where I race. It just happens to be iRacing, and sometimes I don't even choose it. So overall, the early access trend for releasing sim racing titles is not helpful in any sort of way, except for getting the company cash that it may need to survive. I don't argue that at all. If they need the cash, they need the cash. But it doesn't help the community in any way grow. It doesn't help the game expand to a broader audience. It only allows people more ingrained in the community to compare your game to other more fleshed out games. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree with my take on early access, or do you have a different opinion? I'd like to hear all you guys. All right, thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day. Hope to see you all on the track.